don't be afraid of the night. So long as you have a medium to average stick, you'll be right as right and have plenty of fire to be. I didn't want this to sound the way it, okay. A perfectly fine stick, okay, I get it. Also, just make sure to angle your stick upwards and don't kind of let your hand droop, because then the flame will basically head towards your hand. So as long as you keep it vertical, you'll be surprised. You can actually pick up a log like that's been burning for a while, and as long as you grab it and then point it upwards so the flame starts, going up, you'll basically be able to use this as a makeshift torch, so long as your hand's not at like the midpoint of the stick, and you'll be right as rain. Then you can literally just run into the night. It's pretty amazing and actually be fantastic for you doing the #1 goal in this game, which should be you going and getting the holster for the flintlock. This allows you to actually push back against the monsters in the night and actually harvest some of their meat if you happen to survive long enough to get the knife. But we'll talk about stuff like that in a little while. So night is amazing. But what is even more amazing, the ultimate tool in this game that you have to understand if you are playing it, especially for me, a player who has gotten everything at this point. I've gotten the rifle, I've got the flask, the whole shebang. The thing that is still the most useful that you should always have in your hand is a rock. Just a rock. It is the Swiss Army of all things in this game. I'll mention it in a little bit here, but it is good for just cracking enemies in the head. It's the only thing that seemingly does damage. Not a lot of it, but enough. And also, it's the thing that's going to ignite anything. So honestly, if you have 2 rocks, fantastic, but you only really need 1, because so long as you can find a rock hill, like just any stone anywhere, you can actually pick up like any sort of kindling and smack the big ass rock and the tiny rock together and create a spark, and that can be your kindling, and then you just drop it on a thing, and now you have fire. So you don't really need to carry around 2 rocks, just the 1, and have access to the whole island, which happens to be rock. But yes, the rock also cracks open coconuts. You'd think the knife should do that as well. It doesn't. Or even the butt of the flintlock. No, only rock. Rock is the king here, okay? Rock is king. Rock should always be in your hand. I know it's a weird battle of like what you should hang on to. Rock should always be the thing you hang on to. Even though there's a lot of them, it's still the only thing that is the most useful. So if you don't have that, you're screwed. But let's get into everything else about how to survive in Bootstrap Island. Let's start with some surface level things first. Again, your #1 priority should be to head to the right as soon as you spawn in. If you get the worst spawn possible, which is the far left islands, terrible. You better off just die. Die real quick, get to the midpoint at the very least, then you're gonna wanna go the route that I'm showing you right now. But first things first, you're gonna need 2 rocks to actually start a fire. And you're gonna need some sort of fire kindling. This usually appears as like this kind of dead seaweed, grassy kind of thing on the ground, but frankly, you can also just use coconut husks. You can get these husks by taking a coconut and slamming it with a rock, or using 2 hands to slam it against a big ass rock, aka a stone wall or something, and that will crack really fast. Then you simply reorient your hands and grab the top of the husk, peel it back, absolutely cool because of how good the satisfying sound effects are in this game. And then you have a kindling. Also, you can create some sparks by taking a rock and just smashing it against a big wall of stone if you happen to be desperate. By the way, if you want some quick thirst and hunger, which you're gonna need when you're just spawned in, you're gonna wanna crack that coconut up and quickly grab them. I suggest you do this on the ground. You can hit a button on your controller that actually drops your character, so you don't have to crouch all the time, which is nice. Crack open that coconut and then just drink it all, and then you can eat the surrounding things. You can also kind of double dip if you're eating and drinking at the same time by holding them both to your mouth, but you may look like you're jerking off too. The next thing that's really important to note, especially when it comes to making fires, is basically you want to create a line, and ideally you have something behind you. So a big ass rock, something that would basically impede the enemies that are AI trained to circle around you. So you can basically make the AI significantly less aggressive when they're having trouble, when they are kind of face smashing a rock because they're trying to get behind you. This is even better if you happen to encounter a big ass tree that they can actually get behind you, but they can't engage you. So if the enemies just end up not being in front of you and going behind you, it's great. And the second thing that's really nice to do when it comes to fire is to make a line. This really helps with 2 waves of the enemies that are going to come at you at night, the lizards and the dogs. The minute that the dogs come close and they actually encounter the fire, they'll piss off and they'll back up. But the one that this doesn't affect is, of course, the bats. So a good rule of thumb is basically always have a couple bits of wood beside you and try to keep the longest piece of wood, which is the one that's going to last the longest, protected, and only start that one as soon as night drops. Do not, again, start the fire too early, and then you just light that wood on fire, and if you wanted, you could skip right across and keep on running. And this is what I would advise for people who are just starting out, because you're gonna want that flintlock pistol, which you're going to eventually need if you ever want to fight back against these baddies. Some of the other food things you'll encounter by exploring the island is crabs and fish. Fish are located, of course, in the water, and you'll rarely encounter them just because you'll be so deep in the island getting all the other things that you're going to want. So you're rarely going to encounter fish, unfortunately. But if you do want them, all you need is what is considered a thin, pointy stick. You start to get a sense for them. They're kind of like twigs, and they just have a pointy end on them, and then you can stab them with the stick, and then, of course, cook them, and you'll be good to go. Also, you do not need a massive fire source to actually cook something. All you really need is like one husk from a coconut, throw the fish on that singular piece of kindling, and you'll be good to go in a couple minutes, and it'll be cooked for you. Also, I haven't tried it, but I think you could just smash a rock at a fish, because rock is the only thing that does damage, apparently, in this game, and I would be willing to bet you could club a goddamn fish to death and just eat it like that as well, so you don't need the pointy stick, but test that for me and tell me in the comments, please. I'm sorry, I could test everything. The other piece of food you're going to encounter way more often is crabs. They're usually found in like mud pit areas, but essentially, I would highly advise you guys don't use the pointy stick to kill them, because it's just kind of finagly and sometimes you'll miss. Just use a whole ass rock to club their head in. Bang, you have a thing. What is kind of convenient is the stick, you can stack them on it. But if you stack 3 crabs on one stick, it starts becoming a physics nightmare and they start drooping off and all that stuff. It's rough. It's not great. Yeah, but you can certainly do it, and it looks so aesthetic to cook these on an open fire and just, oh my god. Mwah. And the animal that I forgot to mention is a weird dodo bird looking ass thing. Once again, you just pick up a rock and smash it in the head twice. We're monsters here? Yes, survival is the game, baby. But in order to harvest this, you are going to need the knife. Now, we are basically going to start to talk about the things that you will unlock and what you can do with them, because that's the thing. A lot of you probably played a little bit of the game, died a couple times, and started feeling aimless about what you should do essentially, or how to survive even longer, and maybe you've seen this video. I'm happy to report the tools that I'm sure you kind of thought were pretty useless actually have a ton of uses. The only thing that's shitty is that you do not have enough hands to hold them. Even though I would totally hold a fucking knife in my mouth if it meant I could use the knife consistently. Anyway, let's start with talking about the knife. The knife can actually do a lot of things. The first thing that the knife is predominantly meant to be used for is skinning, despite it does not look like a skinning knife at all. If you manage to take down a creature such as any sort of nighttime enemy, kind of like actual enemy like the lizards, bats, or dogs, you have to plunge it near their heart or their center of mass in order to get it. If you start seeing blood come out, that usually means it's an animal that you can stab, and eventually when you pull out your knife, you'll have this weird meat chunk. But sometimes you'll be just dropping power bombs into this knife in them and you won't get it. I think it's like at the center of where they are. That is where this like weird meat source is. And I don't think there's multiple of them. I think it's just one nugget in them, weirdly enough. But yes, that's what the knife is predominantly used for, is skinning. But did you guys know that if you have a coconut and you have the 3 little holes on the coconut, did you know you can stab with the knife, penetrate those holes, and now you have essentially a perfect water bottle that gives you a ton of thirst. I think it's way more net thirst than even like if you were to perfectly nail the grab and not lose any of the coconut juice as you split it open. I think it's just a ton more liquid. But yeah, you just hold it up to your mouth and your character will start sucking and you'll get a lot of white cream in your stuff. Okay. Good now, baby. Also, another thing you'll unlock is basically a bottle of rum, which just acts as basically a cantina, a water bottle. You can just uncork it and drink it, and now you have some water. Fantastic. But you can actually fill this water bottle up with the various like kind of like springs you'll find around the map, which are basically just these like, if you look along a stone wall, usually there'll be like flowers, like bright pink or blue flowers. That is indicating that that is a spring. So you walk up to those flowers, and usually below them is of course a crevasse filled with water. You can cup your hands and drink, but you can also refill this water bottle, which is fantastic. But I will unfortunately be the bearer of bad news. This water bottle does not seem to really contain a ton of water. It seems to only really be able to give you like a drink and a half, if that. But what's really cool about this water bottle is you can actually pour coconut juice into the water bottle, refilling it, which is way more consistent than having to find a fucking spring, essentially. So yes, and using the same method of popping a hole in the coconut top and then pouring it into the water bottle is far better than trying to like weirdly pour it in there. But do not try to pour multiple coconuts in the bottle. It cannot hold it. I poured like 7 coconuts, and within 2 seconds I drank it all, and I didn't get that much more thirst from it. So you're only supposed to be able to store a little bit. It only ever becomes like 50% full. It's very annoying. You would love it to be fully full, because you're not an idiot who's surviving and not trying to fill up his fucking cantina all the way. Anyways, also hopefully in the background I showed you guys how you get access to the flintlock pistol, like where the rope is in order to get onto the ship. It's to the left as soon as you approach the ship. Yeah. And on the topic of the flintlock pistol, do you know the flintlock pistol can actually blow up in your hands if you put too much gunpowder in it? You probably do. No, it's not. Yeah, it makes sense. But a great rule of thumb is something I read in the comments of one of the videos I watched, and it was brilliant. But essentially, count to 5 as you start pouring the gunpowder in. Also, dump the nozzle into the gun barrel itself. The reason why is because if you start to move around, it's very easy for like the physics to break, and then the gunpowder to basically start completely missing the barrel. And when you're running around at night trying to reload your flintlock pistol because enemies are lunging at you, this is amazingly helpful. You kind of like lock it in there and it's great. But fill it up with gunpowder and count to 5. And then just pull back the hammer, put a ball in there, and let it rip. Bang. Also, another quick little pro tip, when you open up any gun chest, whether it's the rifle or the pistol, be sure to take the bullets and fill up the pouch. There's usually like 3 missing. Make sure you fill up the pouch, and you should be right as rain. Also, I wonder, has anyone tried putting multiple bullets into one gun like the rifle? I wonder. I don't think that would work, but maybe. Lastly, one thing I mentioned in the last video, we talked about just how wonderful this game is. Fire lasts longer than you think it does. A great strat that had saved my ass countless times is when I pushed the clock just a little too high, and I had no sticks around me, and all I had was coconuts. And a one rock that I'm always holding, because the rock is the gateway to all things in this game, weirdly enough. It's like the ultimate Swiss Army knife, weird. But yeah, you basically can just strip the coconuts and they'll keep you alive throughout a really struggle of a night. And so long as you basically have one tiny stick that kind of acts as like kind of you batting away enemies, you're kind of good. And if worse comes to worse, you can always just dodge. Although the bats are one of the few things that you kind of can't dodge. They kind of have a very vicious lunge that kind of seeks you out in a really bad way. But they're also the easiest to fend against if you happen to have any stick, which is kind of the main thing you're looking at actually when it comes to surviving this game, is just getting a stick and making sure it is on fire. And yeah, then you just bat at enemies and you'll be right as rain. And lastly, the one thing I didn't mention in this whole video, because I'm going back and talking about how important the rock is this weird fruit. It's like 1,000 little tiny little bites, but apparently it exists. I've not seen it in the game once. I've only seen content creator people happen to stumble upon it. It must be legendary. I have not seen it once. It's pissing me off. I still haven't found it. Another pro strat that I wasn't able to actually use, but I could totally see how good it could be, is if you set your base or your campfire right around a rope. Now, unfortunately, there is one enemy that this will not work for, which is the bats, which is the gameplay you're seeing. It happened to be the bats. Big oof, not great. But if it was the dogs or the lizards, you'd be able to climb that rope, and there's no stamina in this game, so you just be able to hold on to that rope for the whole night. You can't climb too high up or else you'll be in darkness, but you can climb just enough to where you won't get bit. And you'll stay in the heat zone and you'll be fine. So that's a fun strat. Use it if you can. Very rarely are there ropes besides materials, so you'll spend like 90% of your time just throwing materials near the rope. It's probably not necessary, but it's a cool strat to talk about. Anyways. And last but not least, this is the thing that saved my ass countless times in this game. I would highly suggest you make your camp against a wall. This is old news. This is not the tip. Then create a line of sticks in front of you, and so long as you don't ignite it too quickly, it should last the whole night and you should be good, and that will defend against enemies that are grounded. Fantastic. But this is the tip. I would highly advise when you guys are fighting in any capacity at night that you use the crouch button, which will lower your character's center of mass. Awesome. And then actually crouch in real life. Take a knee, basically. This will put you really low in the ground, and it will make it so that the enemies have a harder time to track you and get to you. Very fun, very cool, kind of gives you an edge, especially when it comes to bats. As long as you have a thing against you, you're not getting hit from all ends, and you'll be able to survive and thrive. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I am certain there's going to be more weird, nuancy things when it comes to using the knife. Maybe the water bottle can actually be like boiled, so if you heat up some like water from the ocean, and then you leave the water bottle in the fire, maybe possibly it boils the water. I don't know, but maybe. But I could see there being more weird things added in this this game that would be brilliant. And apparently coming soon is a duffel bag, or like a medic bag, hopefully it's a duffel bag, that you can actually store some things in, and that would make it so that you can actually use all of these cool features. Because again, that's my biggest criticism with the game, is that it's so cool how a knife can interact with a coconut that then can give you like nourishment, and if you happen to have a water bottle, holy shit, you can also pour the coconut juice in that, and now you're just thriving. Awesome. But you only have 2 hands, so you have to literally hold a water bottle at all times and a knife at all times, and you're passing up a rock, kindling, coconuts, food, sticks, and also a flintlock whole-ass gun, rifle. So yeah, so long as you know that the knight's not that scary, the OP nature of how a rock is basically a Swiss Army knife in this game, and how there are just fun things for you to do, especially eventually when they give us this duffel bag, and you can start using the knife and all that stuff in fun ways, then you can absolutely thrive in this game. But who knows? Check the date of this video, and if the video is fairly old, then the game might have completely changed, but hopefully some of these are still just a little bit useful. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for your time. Hope I can see you again, and goodbye, my friends. Also subscribe! Not a lot of people are subscribed. I never mention it. God damn it. Also, if you happen to be a member, I love you. I'm the worst. I forgot to mention the last video too. Bye.